So today we're going to go ahead and take a look at stress and its impact on health. And to kind of start things off, we'll just take a look at a quick survey here that looked at college students and asking how many of them have experienced stress in the last 3 months. And 85% of them said yes. And I'm sure our numbers are probably the same or if not higher. Most of them said that it disrupted their schoolwork at least once. And I think especially now, we are probably all experiencing at least a degree of stress. And for some of us, it might also be disrupting our schoolwork, especially since our schoolwork is taking place at home now. So when we look at stress and the research that has been compiled over the last several years, and as you saw or you will see in the TED Talk, stress is not inherently good or bad. And it's more of a psychological or physiological state than it is an emotion. And so there are benefits to stress, and there are, of course, also going to be some drawbacks. Some of the benefits, of course, is that stress can prepare us. It can energize us. If you think about maybe feeling a little bit of stress before a deadline, it might actually mobilize you to get something finished, or that stress before some type of performance or an athletic competition, right? It can help mobilize the body and actually help us to perform at a higher level. Unfortunately, long-term stress can lead to some more challenging side effects, things like chronic disease. Now, that's not always the case. It depends on how well we can handle that stress, but long-term chronic stress does not typically signify a very healthy output, especially if it's long-term. And that could be everything from like catastrophes, significant life changes, or even just daily hassles. And I think the stressors that we're experiencing right now would definitely fall into that category of long-term stress. And so how we learn to manage that is extremely important, because it could either become very helpful or it could become very harmful. And another thing to kind of consider when we talk about stress too is personality factors. We describe stress and personality as either type A or type B personality types. You've probably heard of them before. People who are type A are usually highly motivated, potentially competitive, sometimes easily frustrated or anger prone because they're such go-getters and they want to accomplish a lot. Setbacks can often cause frustration. Type B personalities is more of that easygoing, relaxed, go with the flow type of personality. Obviously, people fall within a whole spectrum of personality types when it comes to how we handle motivation, achievement, stress, but we do see that there are sort of these side effects of constantly being angry or frustrated all the time. Again, that increases the stress levels that we experience. But part of it is also the stress mindset that the Make Stress Your Friend TED Talk looks at. How you view stress and how you view the stress that you're currently or personally facing can actually change how your body responds to stress. And we talk about your body's response to stress. The number one researcher when it comes to stress is a man named Hans Selye. And he created the General Adaptation Syndrome, or GAS, as we like to call it in psychology, to explain how we respond to stress. Essentially, he says we go through 3 stages when we are experiencing a stressful event. And for that, you can think of R, like ARE, and that's alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. So when you are first presented with a stressor, that is when your heart rate is going to increase, your body is going to prepare to mobilize, you're alarmed to the stress that's at hand. And then comes the phase that is considered resistance. And so that is where adrenaline starts pumping in your body is preparing to resist whatever stress, whatever concern is being alarmed by your body. And then finally, we experience exhaustion, which is if there's no relief during that resistance phase, if there's no reduction in stress at that point, your body's resources are going to run out and you will find yourself completely exhausted. And that leads to a whole host of side effects. You're more susceptible to illness, hypertension, heart disease, depression, right? All of those things can follow that exhaustion phase in the general adaptation syndrome. And of course, you can see the model that we have here. This is, again, if that resistance goes on with little to no relief. If we can try and bring this down a little bit, or if we can try and, sort of intersperse it with periods of normal level of arousal or moments of respite relief, then this can, of course, continue on for a much longer period of time, and we won't see such a drastic crash in the exhaustion phase. So those are some of the benefits to stress reduction techniques. When it comes to the research in stress and illness, the field that looks at how stress affects our health is called psychoneuroimmunology. And so that looks at the psychological and neurological effects on health. So everything from age, nutrition, genetics, body temperature, and stress, how they influence our immune system. And so we can see there are specific types of illnesses that are called psychophysiological illnesses. And those could be things like stress-related illnesses, like headaches, for example. If you have tension headaches or hypertension related to stress, perhaps high blood pressure related to stress, those would be called psychophysiological illnesses. And what we see with these studies on stress and people who are already chronically ill, they show that stress may predict a faster decline because it makes the body more difficult to fight off infections. Now, it's correlational research, not necessarily causational, so we don't know if the stress is what's causing that quicker decline, but there is a relationship there that is definitely worth investigating further. So if that's the case, how do we deal with stress? How do we address it? We've talked about a couple of things in this unit already. The MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction techniques, are gaining a lot of popularity as more research is coming out in terms of how a mindfulness practice can actually help reduce stress. It doesn't get rid of the stressful events, but like we said, as you're in that resistance phase, these mindfulness techniques can hopefully help lower or give you some moments of relaxation or rest during that so that you don't hit that exhaustion phase at the end of it. Typically, when we talk about your body's response to stress, we often talk about the fight or flight response, which actually should probably be called the fight, flight, or freeze response, when your body mobilizes to fight against or get rid of a stressor. Some people will fight against it, some people will flight, right? They'll run away, and other people will freeze, right? They will immobilize. And so that's usually how we look at how a person responds to stress. You deal with it, you run away, or you do nothing. There's more research showing that there's actually this other element that again shows up in the TED Talk called tend and befriend. And tend and befriend basically says that when we seek and give support during times of stress, that it can actually strengthen our relationships. Because what we find is that stress also releases the hormone oxytocin, which if you've heard of before, and they call it in the TED Talk, the cuddle hormone, it is the hormone that is released when you give someone a hug. It is what facilitates bonding and love between people. And so when you seek out help from other people when you're feeling stressed, or when you help someone else when they are in a time of stress, it can actually help to strengthen the relationship between people. So next time you are feeling stressed, don't feel like you have to deal with it alone. Seeking out help or letting someone know that you are not doing well, that you're stressed out, it can actually lead to strong relationships if you tend and befriend, if you seek out support during those stressful times. So that's where the research is right now on stress and stress response, and what we can do to help manage that general adaptation syndrome. So next time you're feeling stressed, call a friend, have a video chat, a face chat, especially during these times when we are on our computers or on our phones if we can't be together face to face, or seek out someone in your family, and hopefully we'll see some better responses to stress in the long run.